Hey everyone, and welcome to Big Red Homestead. I'm Josh, that's Caleb, and today we got Connor with us, Corn Crazed, and we're ranking the top 10 players heading into the Nebraska football season on this Husker roster, obviously in the new era of Matt Rhule. And so we have a lot to talk about today. I mean, it's going to be a blast. And Connor, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, I mean, it's good. We're going to be starting it off real hot today. And basically how we're going to do this is just back and forth, revealing players. And so essentially top 10s. If you have any honorable mentions, you can maybe mention them at some point. If someone mentions a name, then we all kind of talk about where we have that guy ranked. All right. So we'll kind of reveal the names as we go up the list here. So I guess we can start off at number 10. And Connor, if you want to kick us off here with number 10.
10, I'm going Ty Robinson, defensive tackle. He's going to start, and he's got some history at Nebraska, obviously. 3 years, I think he's been a consistent player. He's got 51 tackles over the last 2 years, I think it was. 8 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, 2 passes defended. So he'll have Nash Hutmacher on the line with him and Blaze Gunnarsson. But I'm big on Ty Robinson. He's the most experienced, and I'm guessing now that he's had this full season in the new weight program, he's going to be a pretty beastly lineman.
I mean, he's been like one of those most inconsistent guys in the past 2-3 years. Where I feel like, I mean, early on last year we were both really harping on him, but I think we both agree though. In the second half of the year,
he grew as the season went on.
He played a lot better. So I totally get the ranking. I mean, like you said, when it comes to
think he's
bodies
up
on the front 7, he's one of the vets for sure. I mean, did you have him in the top 10? Because I did not.
I did not have him in the top 10. I had him as an honorable mention. I do think there is definitely room to grow, and the team definitely needs somebody to establish on that front line some sort of dominance to get the pass rush again after losing O'Shawn Mathis. And also, Garrett. That's a big hole to fill. So I'd be very excited if he could crack our top 10 at the end of the season. I think that would be very exciting. That's not who I have. I have somebody at number 10 who I've been kind of high on as just the season's kind of gone along, and that's a freshman Malachi Coleman. I already think he's a top 10 player. I know. Hot take coming out. I think this is his hottest take player on our team. Yeah. So
welcome to the show.
Yeah, that's my hot take. I think, again, at his frame, just his size, I think he can translate well right away, and I think he's going to be a giant contributor. I don't think he's not the only wide receiver on my list as the tease, but I do think that he is one of our best players coming in. He was our best, ranked recruit. And, after the loss of Xavier Betts, there was a big hole to be filled. So I think that Malachi Coleman is up to the task, and I have high hopes for him in his freshman year.
Thoughts?
All right. I think Malachi is going to come on later in the year. I think he'll develop into a really good player, potential NFL type guy, right? But right away, my understanding, things that I've heard, is that he's not going to be on the field as much as you would expect. And I think it's going to take 4 or 5 games for him to get worked in, get comfortable, obviously learn the playbook. There might be other freshman receivers or some of these other walk-on guys they're talking about, like Bullock and Ty Hahn, who are going to take that role.
The question will be is whether or not the coach's hands are forced. I mean, right now, there's basically 4 veterans there. If you count Josh Fleeks as, one of the additions there with Isaiah Garcia Castaneda. And then you're looking at 1,000 question marks. So it's possible that their hands forced, but I do agree with you. I mean, based off everything Rhule and Satterfield has said, I mean, it doesn't sound like they're looking to play freshmen early, and they, especially not in the Minnesota game. And maybe
this was hard to get on the field. It's going to be.
I think they might play a couple freshmen in the Minnesota game at receiver, right? Is it more than 2 or 3 plays, right? And if it's not more than 2 or 3 plays, is he even going to get a catch or a target, right? And at that point, I can't put him anywhere near a top 10 list.
Yeah, I think talent's going to take over soon for him. I know. He's my hottest.
I mean, to be fair, it is a season-long top 10. So I mean, at the end of the day, you could be proven right by the end of the year. It is possible. I mean, totally reasonable. I think.
There's a belief within Nebraska's facility that he could be a starter next year for sure, one of the top 3 receivers. But is he going to be ready right away this year? I don't know.
I mean, at the end of the day, you're basically projecting a Wan'Dale Robinson level of freshman ascension for
Stanley Morgan.
Stanley Morgan, something like that. Yeah.
And those guys did do it as true freshmen. That's,
it's not impossible.
It's not impossible, but it is bold for sure. This is not a bold take episode, man.
I'm here. I'm ready.
Yeah. So I have another one that I was between 2 or 3 here, and there's like a handful of guys for me right on the bubble of like these. They could be the 10th or the 9th ranked guy. It's really, really close. So I'd have no problem with like, Ty Robinson or some of these other names that we're going to mention here around 8 or 9 or 10. But I ended up going with a little bit for projection here. I think season long, he's going to emerge, and that's MJ Sherman at number 10. And I could see having him higher on this list. And I definitely debated it. Coming over, he has the athletic build. He's going to have the playing time, the opportunity. And overall, I really like the potential that he brings to this Nebraska front, even though it is a lot of a projection. Obviously, we haven't really seen that explosiveness in his current time on the field, but I'm definitely excited for MJ Sherman.
I went with him as my number 12. I think MJ has a lot of potential, a lot of upside. Obviously, he has the skill set that they want at that position, and he's going to get a lot of play because he's the starting edge and presumably the number 1 pass rusher on this team. The problem I have with putting him any higher than 12 right now is we haven't seen him do anything yet. All we've seen is spring ball and what we've heard from practice. And when you get a guy who's already played college football for 2-3 years and he hasn't played pretty much at all, some question marks still, even though he is playing on a defense that's not nearly as good as where he came from. So 12, but I am going to expect that he breaks into the top, 6, 7, maybe 8 players on the entire team.
Yeah, I mean, he very unproven. He had 5 tackles, 4 solo, and half a sack last year. And yeah, like Connor said, just he's been around, and the linebacking core, if he hasn't broken out already, I'm kind of with you. We need the pass rush desperately, though. So I love this on the list. Nebraska, if we want to be an elite defense this next year, if we really want to compete in these games, we need to find it somewhere.
But how is 42 snaps at Georgia? It's got to be worth a few hundred at Nebraska, right? I mean, come on.
It's worth 100 at Nebraska, so it's going to have 400 at Nebraska.
That's what I'm saying. So, all right, there you go. MJ Sherman at 10. So who you got at 9, Connor?
Thomas Fidone. And this one is a guy who I contemplated putting anywhere from 9 to 5. It's a tough one. The problem is you've got the injury history, you've got the unknown factor. You saw him in the spring game, and it wasn't like he was an elite player, but you hear now that he could be one of the best receiving options that Nebraska has. You know that the offense is going to gear towards him, and another guy who I expect to break into the top 5 players by season's end, but I just don't have the guts to put him any higher than him right now with zero proof.
I have him at 8.
Built like a monster. He looks like the guy, and he has the highest potential, I think, out of any receiver or tight end, but we'll see.
I mean, he might have the highest ceiling of any player on the team when it comes to how good he could be.
Yeah, he's a beast.
Yeah, on the stature and the recruiting, if he can stay healthy. And I love how Matt Rhule has just handled the whole situation this whole offseason of, taking it slow with him, just getting him healthy. And that, again, just shows me that Matt Rhule sees the talent already, prepping him for the season, easing him into it. And just the way that he talks about the guy, I'm definitely excited for Thomas Fidone. And it'd be awesome for him to break out this season. I'm expecting it too. Again, tight ends in the Big Ten West in this final season, it is so important, and I think we have an absolute unit on our team that can take us there in Thomas. So I'm excited.
He's our first elite Big Ten tight end, and we've had some very solid ones, very, very solid ones, but maybe he's the first one that finds that top 2 or top 3 in the Big Ten. I mean,
well, we had him listed at 8 and 9. Where do you have him listed?
I had him at 11. So he was right on the fringe for me. Yeah. And he was one of the guys with me and Sherman I was going back and forth on. And like you said, it really came down to, we've seen Sherman have snaps on the field, and he was solid at Georgia in the snaps at least. I mean, we just haven't seen it. I mean, it's just, I don't know. So that was the question.
So I have Norden Newley at my number 9.
Interesting. I like it.
I think that he was our most solid offensive line in our core that we had coming in from,
How dare you say something nice about the offensive line?
I know.
That's illegal this offseason in Nebraska.
And, he lost the season due to a suspension to establish what, the balanced attack that Satterfield and Rhule want. It's going to come with Norden Newley. Again, from what we've seen of him, solid on the field, especially for how young he was. I'm excited for him this season. A year off, just a bunch of weight training, and I think he's been ready, and I'm excited to see him on the field.
I'm thinking he is higher than a number 9. I've got him at number 7, and I considered putting him at 5. So this was the guy who was the second best offensive lineman in 2021 behind Cam Jurgens, and he only started 7 games that year. He started 7 games the year before that at Colorado State as a true freshman. Was it the year before or maybe the year before that? Whatever it was. Yeah. He's only played and started in 14 games, maybe played in 15. But regardless, I think he could be Nebraska's best offensive lineman this year. I don't know what he had going on with the supplements and the weight room last year. Hopefully it pays off this year, though.
That's what I'm also thinking. I'm like, hey, maybe this pays off.
You're right. What am I doing? I should have him in my top 10.
I think this is a top lineman on the entire team. Battling with Ben Scott is the number one guy. So I'm going to ride high on him, and I think this is another guy who could break into the top 5 players on the whole team.
Yeah, I'm with you. I was back and forth on him or Ben Scott on who I was going to rank higher. So yeah, I'll leave it at that.
It was 2019 where he was at Colorado State. He had an off year. Then 2021 was his Nebraska year. So he's been around the block for a while now, which is actually wild. But yeah, I mean, he was graded 66.8 on PFF in 2021, which is very respectable. Again, one of the, for me, that's all-star level for Nebraska linemen currently. But I agree. I mean, I feel like I am underrating him. I had him at 12 when I was making my list. So he was just missed that top 10 for me as well. It just comes down to confidence. I mean, that second half of the year in 2021, he did not perform as well in those final few games where he was like an all-star in like the first like 5 or 6 weeks. Right. So when he played, so we'll see there. I love the pick though. I really, really do, to say the least. I guess it's my turn for number 9 here. And at number 9, this is a guy who, if he's back from injury, he's going to ascend. And I'm really excited about him being the enforcer in the back. And that's Marquez Buford at number 9. I flirted with him being higher on this list, but I just settled here because of the injury. Obviously last year, he had mistakes in coverage. He made mistakes, but he was the guy that literally set the tone for the defense last year, even though he was so young. And another year forward here, I'm really excited what Buford could bring to the secondary.
I had him at my number 7. I moved him back to my number 13 behind MJ Sherman.
Okay.
Because we're not going to see him play in the first couple games, is my guess. I don't know how many games it's going to take to get him back, but it sounds like Matt Rhule's going to take it slow. He was a beast last year, and I think it's that he played fearless. He hit guys basically in any way he could to get the ball out.
So good.
He played lights out pretty much the entire way through, and it got him injured at the end of it, right? Yeah. He wasn't as polished, but it was his first year playing, and he went through a coach transition. I'm sure now with a DB-focused defensive coordinator, he's going to have a really successful upswing, and hopefully he can get back on soon because I think he is the best DB back there with Quentin Newsome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I slid him behind Malachi because, I'm just I'm bought in. I'm bought in on the Malachi. So.
A truther. All righty. So who's your next guy on the list here?
Okay, I'm going 8. I've got Malcolm Hartzog.
Whoa. Okay.
I think this is a respectable spot. I know there are going to be some questions because people think he could be a top 5 player on the entire team, but he only had 22 tackles last year, 1 tackle for loss, 3 interceptions, 2 passes defended. Now, he was a true freshman. Obviously, we weren't going to expect him to be electric, but he's a little on the smaller side. I don't know if he's going to be better than Quentin Newsome this year.
Agreed.
Bigger, probably more NFL developed at this point, but I still think he's going to be a really solid DB for Nebraska and definitely a top 10 player on the team.
I'm a little bit lower on Hartzog just because I feel like we're 1 year away. I think he's going to probably by the second half of the year be in a really good spot and then the following season be like locked and loaded. But to me, like you said, the size is a question. His tackling got better in the second half of the year, but for me, at the end of the day, he made the flashy plays, but when it came to consistent coverage, there were question marks. I think we're overlooking that because of the flashy interceptions that kind of overshadowed some of the mistakes that he did make on the outside.
There is kind of a world for both ways. I felt too that he was inconsistent, but man, did he make some game-winning plays for Nebraska as the season went on. And so that is what makes it tough. And maybe we're seeing it wrong where this 3.35 and this is the difference maker and he makes that jump right away. It's just really hard to know who is going to be super successful, and maybe in this more free way transitions to more of like a safety role in this position.
I think he's gonna play safety probably.
Yeah,
man, depending on
I could see it. Yeah, I could see that. I'm excited to see him in this new position and new role.
Okay, then at my 8 I would assume you guys are going to have him higher. I'm a little bit lower on consensus, I think. But at number 8, I have Gabe Ervin. So obviously, I think we all can see the potential with Ervin. The body's there, the athleticism's there, the build's there. For me, it comes down to consistent running. There's still question marks in the pass game. and how he's going to play on the field. So for me, he's a little bit too one-dimensional right now, and I want to see him evolve his game a little bit more. But again, he has upside for top 4, top 3, top 2 on his team if everything works out for him this season.
You say top 4. I've got him at my number 4, but there's a caveat here. I've got him and Anthony Grant.
I double ranked it too.
We're loopholing this?
Yes,
here's
100%.
The thing. Both of these guys come in with special skill sets, unique skill sets that are different from the other. And one of these guys is going to get more carries than the other, but who knows which one's going to break out and be the number one guy. Anthony Grant went off for 900 plus yards last year. I think another 100 as a receiver. He had 6 touchdowns, 4 yards a carry, and that was with an atrocious scheme and offensive line. I think Gabe Ervin has the exact same potential to break out how Anthony Grant did. They just have different skill sets, right? One's a little bit bulkier, more of a bruiser. One's a little bit more finesse, a little faster. So I'm putting them both at my number 4. And one of these guys is going to be one of the top 5 players on the team by season's end. I just don't know which one.
No, that's what's hard because I'm now hearing from Kemp. At first, it was Gabe Ervin, and that's what we've been hearing about. And then now, as it's kind of progressed, Anthony Grant, it's like, oh, he's seeing more first-team snaps. And I'm absolutely with Connor. I don't know how to separate these two. I have them both at number 6, but yeah, they're going to be top 5. It's just so hard to know which running back it's going to be. But I see this a lot, like if they can both stay healthy, like AJ Allen and Grant last year, they were both great. They were both top 10 players for us during that part of the season. And I have high hopes with a better offensive line that they can both be that for us.
Either of them could be. I'm just not willing to put my bet on either of them. That's why I dropped them both down the list a little bit here versus some of the other guys. So I feel I have a little bit more confidence in consistency.
You can't put your bet on a single one. I get that because either of them could unseat the other, but you can put your bet on that position, right? You can say a running back is going to be one of the most important positions on the entire offense, on the entire team, since
most
they're going to want to control the ball. Yeah, they're going to want to control the ball, and they're going to want to play Big Ten football this year. So there's no question they're going to get plenty of opportunity, and both of these guys have the skill set to rack up some yards. So it's hard for me not to put them up in the top 5.
All right.
Yeah, I think with the interior of the line being a little bit better than it was last year. I mean, Grant, again, he kind of got in bad habits as the season went along, running horizontal
towards the sideline. Oh my word, this man.
Well, there was nowhere else to go. In a little bit of his defense, he was getting mauled a few yards back behind the line of scrimmage.
His problem was he was treating Wisconsin's defense as if it was like Buffalo or Northern or Georgia Southern. Like he was trying to do what he was doing against Georgia Southern.
Herbig was coming for him too.
Right. So that's what I'm saying.
Tough. Yeah, so I have Ben Scott at number 7.
Oh, same.
Yeah. Oh, hey, look at that. Look at that. Reliable center. Again, lots of experience. Any injection of life in our offensive line that we could get in the portal was desperately needed for Matt Rhule. I've said it last video. I think I wish we could have just had 5 extra bodies because we need it desperately. Just looking at our schedule, our different position groups that we had, our offensive line was an outlier, an anomaly in such a bad way. And it has been for the last couple of years. They've been holding this team back. And so Ben Scott, again, Norden Newley, having both of these guys, hopefully Prohaska if he can get healthy. And that's just been his problem the last couple of seasons. Dude can't stop growing. The guy just gets taller each and every year. It's huge for our team. It's invaluable to have somebody that knows.
Well, I mean, in 2021, he really broke out at Arizona State. And I mean, he ended up with a 75 PFF grade that year. And I mean, that's like legit, and 83 in run blocking. So you get something like that from him in the Big Ten, like, oh my word, we're talking like next level. That would be the best performance PFF wise that we've seen from an offensive lineman in years and years and years. So obviously he descended a little bit in 2022 and then ends up transferring. So there is question marks still here about what his upside looks like, but at least we know he has elite potential and he's done it before. So if we can get any type of, even last season for Ben Scott would be a top 10 player for us this year. I think that's not to mention how crucial it would be for our performance as a team. So did you have Ben Scott in your top 10?
Ben Scott at my number 11. And the problem is I can't stomach putting 2 offensive linemen. And Ben Scott didn't play in the Big Ten. Ben Scott played in the Pac-12. And as much as I want to get excited about him being an elite player and the NFL talk, there's potential for him to be a top 3 center in the entire conference. But it's tough. He's coming to an entirely different conference, and he's going to have a different offensive line around him. I think last year, one of the ASU linemen transferred to Michigan. So, and he's going to be a starter there this year. So he's going to be the anchor on an O-line that's not as strong, in my opinion. And he's going to be playing against a lot fiercer competition. So we'll see. Hopefully he can keep it up and have that same kind of grade.
Yep, 100%. Really nice. All right, so then take us away with your number 6.
Number 6, I've got Quentin Newsome.
Okay.
Last 2 seasons, 101 tackles, 6 tackles for loss, forced fumbles, and 14 passes defended. So Quentin's been here for 2 years as a full-time starter, and I think he played a little bit 3 years ago as well. So experienced, big body, fast enough. He pretty much is the ideal corner you could get in the Big Ten because of his size and speed. He's a potential NFL guy. We heard that from Travis Fisher and Tony White. I like Quentin, and I think that he's going to be, I'd call him the leader of that DB room outside of the Rover. But right, he's about Quentin. So I'm taking him as my number 6.
That's fair. So I am very high on Quentin Newsome, and maybe this is part of why I lowered Malcolm Hartzog, because I really do believe Newsome's going to have this next level ascension this season. Last year was a little bit underwhelming for the expectation that we had going into last year with how good he could have been, but he was still extremely solid. And I mean, that's all we can ask for from a guy like that last year, with considering how much pressure was put on him. So I actually had him very high. I had him up at number 2 this year. I really do believe Quentin Newsome's going to ascend to the next level. He has the build, and I think bringing in Tony White, I think it's a perfect match. I'm really excited to see what Quentin Newsome can do this season.
He was a consistent guy last year, right? You had multiple corners have to switch out on the opposite side, but he always held it down. So there's hope.
Exactly.
Yeah, I had him very high too. I had him at number 3. Big things.
He had some tackling problems last year. Like when they were running his side and he tried to make some plays, he's not the most physical of guys in the run game, especially. So I think we're looking to kind of ascend that next level of just dog on that defensive side for Newsome and just lay the wood a little bit on that defensive side.
Hopefully he brings it out this year.
Yes, sir.
Hopefully the front 7 can do their job and not have to, we don't have to get to the 3rd level.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, Caleb, who you got at number 6?
So I said number 6 and Gabe Ervin already.
Okay, then I guess I'm up. So at number 6, I'm rocking Marcus Washington. Hopefully, as long as he's coming back playing, I really think Marcus is going to find that next level this year. Last year, we saw him play well. And again, I maybe I'm just prioritizing consistency, guys who I know can bring it. That's the problem heading into this year is there's just so many questions on so many different positions. It's nice to have the guys that you know are going to be there, that you know are going to contribute and know are going to bring it. And Marcus Washington, sure, he doesn't have the upside that some of the other players have when it comes to dominating the position, but I think we know exactly what we're going to get from him. He's a very, very consistent route runner. I'm a big fan of Marcus Washington on the outside there. It's just being that anchor for Jeff Sims across the middle and downfield.
Yeah, he had 31 catches last year, 471 yards, 15.2 yards per reception, and a touchdown, and a couple key catches there later in the season for us to stay in the games. I didn't have him in my top 10, but I do agree with you, said he's just a nice floor to have. We know what we're going to get from him, a very solid wide receiver. It's crazy, him, the Texas guy, Casey's left, got a new quarterback in Jeff Sims, but I still think there could be a connection there.
Right. I mean, that would be the counter argument for him not to be there, is that he played at his ceiling last season with a guy he was comfortable with at Nebraska as a number 2 receiver behind Trey Palmer. So the question is whether or not he can be kind of an alpha this year and really, really still be consistent and efficient, which I think he can be now as a 5th-year guy who, I mean, he even played snaps, in 2019 for Texas. So he's been around the block. And I think he can really find another level and play to at least what he did last season. And if he does that, he's a top 10 player in my eyes.
I've got him a little lower. At number 14.
Okay.
2 spots behind MJ Sherman. I'll tell you, Marcus Washington's intriguing because he did flash and have some moments last year, but he also had some drop balls, and he didn't make his presence as felt as I thought he would, especially having that connection with Casey beforehand. He won't have the same connection with Jeff Sims. And what's interesting is he's now injured. So how much of a connection can he build, and how much is it going to hurt him that you've got 3 or 4 other receivers who are now working with Sims all throughout fall camp?
That's fair.
And these guys sound like they're pretty good receivers. You've got IGC back, who exploded in that first game against Northwestern, and I think he has a higher ceiling. I do think he has a higher ceiling than Marcus Washington. We don't know yet. We've seen some film of him from New Mexico State, and he looked fantastic. But yeah, Marcus is in his 5th year. I don't want to say he's peaked out, but do guys get better from their 4th to their 5th year, or do we already know what we've gotten him? That's kind of where I sit with it.
I mean, fair enough.
At the end, he disappeared at times. for long stretches in the game. It was surprising that he would disappear again and then have those great catches. So, granted, we don't have an offensive line.
Yeah, you couldn't pass block for Casey. All he had to do was heave it downfield to the one guy who was open, which was Trey Palmer, man. Like, what are you going to do? Jeez, you only have time to look for one guy in your first read TP downfield. So,
yep.
I think overall we're going to be utilizing a lot more dink and dunk this year, at least early on in the year. And when Marcus Washington's back, which sounds like, he will be back for week 1. It's just going to be a slow transition. Overall, I think
he's great.
We're going to be finding him the ball. We're going to be finding ways to give him the ball. And so, long story short, I still think Marcus Washington can really bring it this season. So, yeah, loving it.
My number 5 is Luke Gifford at Rover, 1 spot ahead of Quentin Newsome. He got the single digit. He's
he's in the 10.
Starter? Yeah, no, 2021
he was the nickel
over at the very end. I think it was like the last couple of games, but yeah, last year he was really the starter. 70 tackles, 5 tackles for a loss, a sack, 3 passes defended. And my feeling here is that the Rover is going to be really versatile. He can drop into coverage, he can run up and blitz. He's going to have such a strong role, and he's already proven to be a leader on this team. Rhule talks about him a ton. It's the guy who I'm going to right now consider the leader of the DB room.
100% agree. I'm a huge fan of Gifford. I think this year he might be the player that takes the biggest leap in a role that fits him absolutely perfectly. I'm sure he was a decent nickel, but at the end of the day, what he wants to do is he wants to play in coverage and he wants to be able to scout the field. And I think a more safety position fits him better. Feels like Rover was literally made for this man. And so overall, I think position matched with talent, I see him ascending to being Nebraska's best player this season. As a leader on the field, I have him at number 1. And so that's the Huskers' best player, Isaac Gifford.
Isaac Gifford is number 1. That is
number 1.
Wrong.
I hate to spoil it too, but I also have him at number 1.
No way. List. Oh, let's go.
Yeah, I also have him number 1. I agree with you.
Big believers in him.
We're starting the Gifford fan club, baby. Let's go.
Isaac Gifford fan club. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, Luke was our most consistent linebacker for us, and again, as an NFL guy. And Isaac has been asked a lot of him since a young age at Nebraska, and he's really answered the call. And our best tackler that we had on the field last year, I felt, was Isaac Gifford. And so him being able to, again, be in both sides, he is solid in coverage, but also, again, he's great on the run stop too, better than most of our linebackers in that position. And I couldn't agree more. I really think that, this Rover position, we found a really great match with it in Gifford, and I think he's our best defensive player, and maybe on the team.
Wow.
I mean, either way, I don't think, even if he's not the best player on Nebraska, I think he's, besides, of course, quarterback, he is the most important player on this team. I mean, because if he flopped or if he got hurt, I don't know if we have any guy that can come in and even get close to fulfilling the level of play and the versatile role that he's going to try to provide here. So to me, he's like the second most valuable player on the field besides Jeff Sims, of course.
Well, who's going to back him up and who could take on a strong role by the end of the year is Eric Fields, and they're obsessed with that guy. What was the quote? I think Tony White said that he's only 200-something pounds, but he hits like he's 240. So I think there's a lot of hope that once Gifford's gone, he can step in and take over that spot. So.
Well, good. I mean, that's what we need. Obviously, Gifford was kind of like the next up, and he was the heir to JoJo Domann. So at the end of the day, we're looking for that guy, especially now that we're going to have this kind of Rover position as an eternal role for Nebraska, ideally. So we'll see what happens. So we're firing up that Gifford fan club. Yeah, Caleb, we got a 5.
I have Luke Reimer at my number 5 player. And
man, we are telepathic today.
No, are you kidding me? You look at my list.
Dude, what is happening here, dude?
This is a guy that I have been hoping for a few years has kind of taken the next leap. And in coverage, he has. And I think that fits the system well. In coverage as a linebacker, he's been very solid for Nebraska. Yep. And that's where he's really shined. When he was Big Ten player, defensive player of the week, it was because of him in coverage. And we've seen him shine in those moments and be able to cover some of the best, tight ends in the Big Ten at that position. The thing that's really, there I want him to jump more is just the tackling. Exactly. Being able to stop the run, to hit the running backs hard, to stop those guys in their tracks. Obviously, it's hard in the Big Ten. We have, whether that's Maccabee, who is, big, or, obviously Braylon Allen. those two guys, but it's just been lackluster on his end to stop the run. And again, so many times he has so many tackles on the team. The frustrating part is so few are solo. It is with other guys. And if he can get a little bigger, and I'm hoping this year is the year that he kind of fully realizes his potential as a great linebacker to take that next step to be a good run stop, not just a cover guy. But I do think that this fits the system well. And again, he's not great in the pass rush either. Hopefully this 3-3-5 can unlock some things for Reimer, some gadget plays for him he has the skill set to make the jump. And I'm really hoping this year can finally be that year.
I've got Luke as my number 1.
Wow.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Well, I think Luke, he's a walk-on, former walk-on. And when he came in, he was a man on a mission. He played right away on special teams. He earned a spot pretty quickly in the linebacker room, and then he was able to become a starter. And with that mentality, now having a coaching staff who's coming in that's more competent, a strength and conditioning program that's going to be way better for him. And I think this will be a different mentality shift, right? They're going to say, look, here were your flaws and here's where you need to correct. If we're talking about tackling and run stopping, they're going to find a way to get him to be a better run stopper. And because he has that mentality of, I am going to fight and claw my way to the top, and he's shown that he can do that from the most extreme level, he's going to make a massive leap this year under a new staff. So 194 tackles, 9.5 tackles for loss, 2 interceptions, 3 forced fumbles, and 11 passes defended in 2 seasons tells me that's a guy who's a versatile playmaker. He isn't just a guy who's going to be a stud linebacker in the middle and make the simple play, which is get up on the line and make a tackle. He's going to find a way to make something happen when they need it the most, and he's shown he can do that in the past. I love Luke Reimer, and I think he is the best player on Nebraska's team right now.
That's wild. That's bold. I love it though.
I like it. I do think, again, in the past, he is one of the best in pass coverage. With this new format, again, we have it's for the undersized guys, for those linebackers to make the plays, to get in the rush. I can definitely see a world, and for Josh and I, we've been hoping that he's could blossom into this player. And I agree with you. I mean, you got to love his heart. And man, if he becomes our number 1 player, I feel very excited of what Nebraska football can do this next year.
Yeah, I mean, so I have Reimer at 5. So my biggest issue, I mean, yeah, I still think he's a great player. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, he's at 5. My biggest question, I mean, at the end of the day, is you have a body that you've been given. And I don't know if Luke Reimer's body is an elite D1 athlete. Like, he, at least at the point of attack, do I think that he's athletic enough to play across the middle of the field, play zone, and be an effective zone linebacker in coverage? Yes, definitely. Obviously, we've seen it. The question for me is, does he have the body and the speed to be physical on the edges and actually make tackles in the open space? And that's what we have not seen consistently. And so that's why for me, I would just drop him a little bit farther down the list to like 5. And I'm really interested to see this year because we don't know for sure yet exactly how he's going to be utilized, whether that's on the inside or outside. I'm really excited about Reimer if he's on the inside at middle linebacker. And
he is. Well, you've noticed that they've talked about 3 linebackers. It's been Bullock, Hendrick, and Reimer. And Reimer's the one who got the first single digit. Reimer's the one who's never been questioned. Is he going to be the starting inside linebacker? Can Bullock unseat him? It's always been him as the key cog in the middle. And I think that means something, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, after the numbers came out and we saw how the team feels, I do think it's more likely now that he is the center of this defense at middle linebacker. If that is the case, which we haven't got confirmation officially yet, but once we do, I feel a lot better about Reimer as a top 5 guaranteed locked and loaded player. And then that does provide him more upside because it doesn't require him to be the most athletic player on the field at all times. So fire away.
I have Billy Kemp, another one of the 10, at my number 4.
We're going to match this, aren't we?
You
man,
there has been some switching, but yes. Okay. Billy Kemp is my number 4. Another guy that's been on the 10, a great transfer, probably, Ben Scott, Jeff Sims, Billy Kemp, all our best guys that we got from the transfer portal. He's had 74 catches. This is 2 years ago because he didn't play a full season last year. So 2 years ago, 74 receptions, 725 yards, 9.8 yards average, 6 touchdowns with his long being 32. And man, just right away in the spring game, he looked so solid. I love his route running. He is small, but I think that he's going to be an excellent slot receiver for us. And I even can see a jump from the yards that he had this last season. He looks strong. He looks fast and intelligent. And I think he is going to do great things to gash Big Ten defenses this next season.
I've got him as my number 2. He's got 192 career catches. He's been playing for 4 or 5 seasons total.
Yeah, this is his 6th season.
And he was playing at a school who was just atrocious everywhere except at quarterback and I guess him at receiver. They just didn't have the right scheme last year, and he didn't play much anyway. It didn't matter. They were a terrible team last season. I think he got hurt is what happened. But anyway, the year before that, they had a good scheme. And the year before that, I think they did too. But he was a halfback before, and he was used kind of like Wandale was used at Nebraska. So now that he's going to be a true receiving threat, maybe this is kind of like the Kentucky with Wandale situation where we get a guy who was good as a halfback receiver and we make him great as a receiver standalone. That's my hope.
Yeah, I'm right with you guys. I have Billy at 4. So I think, again, he has an incredibly safe baseline as one of the best players on the team. I mean, it's almost locked and loaded at this point. And then the question is, what's the upside? Can he be just a dominant player? For me, his body and his work of experience so far doesn't scream huge upside. But I like that narrative, though, of the Wandale breakout. That's probably the best argument I've heard when it comes to a breakout for a guy like Billy Kemp. So, yeah, I'm here for it.
He's also a returner. Don't forget that part. He brings a lot of value as a return.
Great point. Yeah, Kemp's great. I mean, I think he was, the biggest addition of the offseason, obviously, after Casey left besides Jeff Sims. So I would assume we're going to be talking about Jeff Sims here in a second. So who do you got at number 3?
We've all done our 4s and now we're on to 3.
Yep.
This is my last one, actually.
Mine too.
So can you guys guess who it is?
Jeff Sims.
I put Jeff Sims.
Okay, that's not who I put here.
Ooh,
I actually have Jeff Sims, my number 13.
Wow, we have something to talk about.
My number 3 is Brian Buschini.
I like it. What a dark horse.
Listen, Buschini had the 8th highest yards per punt average in school history in his first year at Nebraska. And in that time, he was playing banged up. I think he had a little injury.
Oh, he was the first half of the year. Yep.
So think of this year when he's got full health and he's got a better situation with a full year under a better special teams coach. Let's assume it's going to be a better special team situation since he's not going to have some coaches get shifted around on him in the middle of the season. Anyway, 25th in the nation last year in yards per punt, and he had 14 down inside the 20. Okay.
Yeah,
Brian Buschini is an NFL level punter, and I can't not put him as a top 3 guy on the team. He's a stud. He's a leader. I mean,
I love this from you.
Everything it takes to be a legit punter at Nebraska, as we've seen from guys like Sam Cook and others who've been successful and moved on.
I agree. I mean, as the season went on and he started getting healthy in those winter seasons, outdoors, cold games, he started firing off those huge punts. It was a game changer for us. And I can't agree. I also think Alvano, the addition, the recruit last year who has done, we've seen, kind of the highlight tape, just easily kicking 50-yard field goals. And we saw what he did at the state championship game, breaking the Nebraska record, a Class A state championship in the cold in Memorial Stadium, making those game time kicks. I really like where the special teams is at. And I agree with both of them. I'm very excited and spicy. Not what I saw coming at all. Not having Jeff Sims on your top 10 at all. I like it though. I like
where did you have Buschini ranked?
I didn't even put him on there.
I mean, to be fair,
you
caught me slacking. I didn't even give it a consideration, to be honest.
Disrespectful.
I know Tom Osborne's yelling at us right now.
Yeah,
it's
he's
one
pissed.
phase of the game. And we say it all the time in our videos too, it's 1/3 of the game being out there. So I love that pick from you.
Yeah, that's really good. But I mean, we got to confront you on this one. Obviously, both of us we've been in line on like 2 through 4 or 5 here. We got Jeff Sims at 3. The upside arguments here, obviously, we saw the upside for him in the spring game with how he was zinging balls across the field, looked extremely accurate. He's got the legs. To me, obviously, the counter argument is the resume he's bringing with him isn't by any means star-studded. But at the same time, he was in one of the worst situations in college football in an offense last year. So to me, Jeff Sims in a new environment with respectable receivers around him, I think he's primed for a great year. I mean, we ended up ranking him in our quarterbacks rankings video 7th in the Big Ten or 6th in the Big Ten as one of the better half QBs in the conference. So we're pretty high on Jeff Sims and
I think we have to put him in the top 10 because if he is not starting at quarterback, staring down the barrel of Chubba Purdy is very scary. So if we didn't have him in the top 10, I would be very nervous. I don't know about you, but I didn't have the most fun last year watching Chubba Purdy run the offense. Rhule has said that he has looked good, and obviously, Heinrich as well has looked very solid. We saw him even, catching some passes, which is great because he's an athletic weapon for our team. But yeah, I know Jeff Sims only 58.5% completion last year, 1,115 yards, 110, 188, 5 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. And I loved Casey. And Josh and I were both kind of debating even before he left on who was going to start. I thought Casey was going to win the battle. But even still, Jeff Sims, I think, is an important cog in the machine. And if we're going to win games next year, we're going to need him to be clutch for us in the fourth quarter to take care of that football. And I do love the dual threat. So I feel like you got to put him in the top 10.
Yeah, I have to leave him off 13. So,
what's your argument here?
Yeah.
The upside's obvious, right? You look at the guy, he's 6'4", 220, runs, 4.4, 4.5. He's got a cannon of an arm, but he had that same upside going into Georgia Tech, and it didn't pan out as well as they had hoped. Then you talk about the receiver room, and there's been a drop-off in hype over the offense and over the quarterback and receiver connection in the last couple of weeks from the practice notes. It's transitioned from, this offense has the potential to be dominant to, there's some question marks.
The defense was winning, yeah.
The defense is winning, the offense is still struggling. And on top of that, this is known to be a run-first offense. How much are they going to let him open it up? And is it going to be a more shallow, short pass game and just give it to the running backs, fullback, and throw dinks to the tight end? I don't know. Is Jeff Sims going to be an effective quarterback, or will he be an effective game manager who has the option to run it when they need him to run in some option scenarios or some quarterback draws, right? Does that quantify him as a top 5 or top 10 player even for me? Probably not. He's going to be a game manager on offense, but the upside is there. And if he lives up to the hype and what everyone says, right, kind of like Anthony Richardson in the NFL, they're like, oh, well, we had to take him as a top pick because this guy's a freak. He looks like Cam Newton. He's super fast, super strong. He's smart, whatever. Those are all great things to hear. But until we see it proven, how can we buy into the hype completely?
It makes sense. Usually at this time, the defense is ahead of the offense. The offense, it has to be the timing. I think there's a lot more moving and pieces involved, knowing the plays. Defense, it's a little more just everything ahead of you. It's not as complicated. Sure, there's going to be some different blitzes, but I feel like it's easier to comprehend the defensive side, where the offense, it's, again, Sims has to know everybody's position. He's coming in with the new playbook. And I do think it'll evolve and it'll get better. I also think the 3-3-5 is an incredibly tough thing to play against as a QB. We're going to throw so much at him. And I think it's going to be a refining fire in this season. But he's going to see a lot of confusing things in practice, and that's going to make him a strong QB, I think, in the season.
Well, I hope so. And I hope that these receivers get it together. Obviously, you lose Betts. Now you've got Marcus Washington out. You've got Billy Kemp and IGC. And then you've got some newcomers and true freshmen. And then the 2 guys who are former walk-ons. It's just an interesting receiver room.
It is
kind of pieced together. It's not like you've seen 3 guys who were all in the rotation last year. There's not even 1 guy right now who was in the rotation last year because Marcus Washington's not playing. So, yeah, it's just interesting that they're all going to have to work together for the first time. And how fast can that develop into something that's consistent and really positive? I'm not sure. And does it need to? I don't think so. I think the run game is going to be really effective, and I think that's going to be their focus. So when you got a quarterback who's got all these intangibles and can throw it like crazy, but you're not going to use him, does that still qualify him as this superstar passing quarterback who can do it all? I don't know.
I think his legs alone are enough to get him into the top 10. And then the upside is whether or not he's top 2 or 3 with the arm. Because, if we see what we saw in the spring game, he's going to be the best player on our team. Then the question is, if he's not that accurate and not that zippy with the ball, then maybe he's like 3rd or 4th and he's just a solid quarterback. It's like Adrian Martinez. He didn't need to be able to throw the ball to be a top 10 player on this team. All he had to do was run. And maybe that's the same case here with Jeff Sims in a year where we want to run the ball as much as possible.
Question for you. And this is something I've kind of battled with back and forth. Do you think that Matt Rhule's going to run it a ton with him? And do you think he's going to try to make it so that his quarterback's the centerpiece of a run offense? Or do you think he's going to try and keep him as healthy as possible because he sees what would happen if he loses his number 1 guy and has to dip into the pot with a Chubba or a Heinrich?
Yeah, well, I think he just recently directly answered this question in one of the press conferences when he was asked about quarterback running. And he said he ideally doesn't want to use the quarterback unless necessary. But at the end of the day, I don't know if we're going to have too many choices.
I think it's going to be necessary. I think it's going to be necessary, personally.
I'm writing the Rhule comment that you just made. I'm writing that, and I'm saying it makes me question how effective this guy's going to be, and is he going to be the game manager, which I'm predicting maybe he's a little bit of a game manager, or is he going to be a guy who opens it up? And against Michigan, he's going to have to open it up, and we're going to see real freaking quick if this guy's that dynamic superstar that they've hyped up.
We have seen Jeff Sims play against elite competition. I mean, they played against Georgia, they were Georgia Tech, they played against Clemson. You've seen him play against some great teams. I mean, and he didn't play awful in those games. I think in that Georgia Tech Clemson game, he had like 100-something yards, a touchdown, a pick, and he ran the ball.
Played in a totally different offense than he's
right. It's a completely different offense. So for me, it's like, I think used effectively.
And with Satterfield, you can see the end of the year kind of what he did, with Rattler, and then maybe that does get you excited as the season went on.
He turned Rattler
playbook
around.
Yeah, and he was on a downward trend.
I'm not saying this is a bad quarterback.
No,
I'm not
saying
No.
We're just arguing the upside.
I just don't know if we're going to be able to see the upside that we're all hoping for. And I think 2-3 weeks ago, I would have bet on the upside. Right now, I question, is he going to get to open it up and do all the things that we would hope he'd be able to do?
We'll see. We will see.
Yeah.
So there it is, ladies and gentlemen. That's the top 10 players for Nebraska, more like the top 20. We went through so many. But it was a blast and obviously a lot to think about. So we want to see your guys' top 10 down in the comments. But we appreciate it. Of course, go check out Corn Crazed. Absolutely fantastic channel. Nebraska football, everything. I'm sure you guys have already found it. If you haven't already, what are you guys doing? Living under a house?
Yeah, are you under a rock?
There? Come on now. You're living in Iowa. Like, what's going on here? So, but we appreciate you for coming on, Connor. It was a blast. And thank you so much for doing this.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was fun.
It was fun. So as always, I'm Josh. That's Caleb. That was Connor. This has been Big Red Homestead, and we'll see you next time. Go Big Red.
Big Red.